Commander Hyunwoo Park stood in the main communication center of Seoul Orbital Station and watched the massive alien fleet through the large viewing screen. The ships looked like dark metal triangles against the stars, and there were so many of them that they blocked out entire sections of space. He had counted them many times over the past 3 days as they moved closer to Earth. 10,000 warships. Each one was 3 times bigger than anything humans had ever built. Dr. Yoon-ji Kim sat at her translation console and made final adjustments to the message they were about to send. She had spent months learning the alien language from the few transmissions they had received. The words felt strange in her mouth when she practiced them, but she knew they were correct. The aliens called themselves the Catherians, and they had already told Earth what they planned to do: complete surrender or total destruction. Those were the only 2 choices they offered. The communication room was quiet except for the soft humming of computers and the occasional beep from monitoring equipment. Other officers moved around checking systems and preparing for what everyone knew would probably be their last official act as representatives of Earth. Captain So-Young Lee had arrived an hour ago from her battle cruiser and now stood near the back of the room with her arms crossed. Her ship was part of the small Earth defense fleet that waited in orbit around the planet. 200 ships against 10,000. The math was not good. Hyunwoo looked at the chronometer on his wrist. In 15 minutes, the alien fleet would be close enough to begin their attack. Earth had tried to negotiate for weeks, but the aliens had no interest in talking. They had conquered 47 other worlds, and they saw humans as nothing more than primitive creatures who needed to learn their place in the galaxy. The only reason they had given any warning at all was because their own laws required it. "Commander, the transmission system is ready," Yoon-ji said as she turned in her chair to face him. Her voice was steady, but he could see the worry in her eyes. She had worked harder than anyone to find a peaceful solution, and now they were down to this final moment. Hyunwoo nodded and walked over to stand beside her console. The message was only 30 seconds long, but it had taken their best diplomats and scientists weeks to write. Every word had been chosen carefully. They all knew the aliens would probably ignore it, just like they had ignored everything else, but Earth had to try one more time. "Send it on all frequencies," he told her. Yoon-ji activated the transmission system and began to speak in the harsh, clicking language of the Catherians. The words came out clearly despite how difficult they were to pronounce. "Catherian Fleet, this is Earth Defense Command. We are broadcasting this message on all communication channels. Turn back now. This is your last chance for peaceful withdrawal. We do not wish to demonstrate our defensive capabilities. We offer you this final opportunity to leave our system unharmed. Please reconsider your chosen course of action." The message went out across space toward the alien fleet. Everyone in the communications center watched the transmission indicator, lights, and waited. It would take several minutes for the signal to reach the alien ships and several more minutes for any response to come back. The silence in the room felt heavy. Captain So-Young spoke from behind them. "Do you think they will even bother to answer?" "They will answer," Hyunwoo replied. "They always answer. They enjoy telling their victims how hopeless their situation is." Aboard the lead Catherian warship, Fleet Admiral Vex Thule received the human transmission and played it for the other commanders on his bridge. The alien officers made sounds that were similar to laughter as they listened to the message. Vex Thule was a veteran of many conquests, and he had heard similar desperate pleas from dozens of species. The humans were no different from any of the others. "Send them our standard response," he ordered his communication officer. "Let them know exactly what we think of their defensive capabilities." The return message came back to Earth exactly 8 minutes after the original transmission had been sent. Yoon-ji translated the alien words as they came through the speakers. "Human creatures, your defensive capabilities are known to us. Your primitive fusion weapons and chemical rockets pose no threat to our fleet. You have 2 choices: surrender completely and submit to Catherian rule, or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide. This is your final communication." The transmission ended, and the room fell silent again. Several of the younger officers looked scared, but the senior staff remained calm. They had all known this moment would come, and they had all prepared for it in their own ways. Hyunwoo activated his personal communicator and sent a coded message to Admiral Jin Ho Nam, who commanded the Earth Defense Fleet. The message was short. Final warning delivered and rejected. Proceed with all preparations. On the bridge of his battle cruiser, Admiral Jin Ho received the message and nodded to his communications officer. Similar messages went out to every Earthship and every hidden facility across the solar system. The long preparation was almost over. Dr. Yunji stood up from her console and walked over to the viewing screen. She had studied the Catherian language and culture for months, and she understood them better than anyone else on Earth. They were not evil, but they were completely convinced of their own superiority. They had never met a species that could resist them, and they could not imagine that humans might be different. They truly believe we are helpless, she said to Hyunwoo as he joined her at the viewing screen. That belief will be their downfall, he replied. Captain So Young checked her own communicator and saw orders from Fleet Command. She was to return to her ship immediately and take position with the rest of the Earth Defense Fleet. The visible fleet would maintain standard defensive positions and follow normal military protocols. Everything had to look exactly like what the aliens expected to see. I need to get back to my ship, she told the others. My crew will be waiting for orders. Good luck, Captain, Hyunwoo said as they shook hands. So Young left the communication center and headed for the docking bay where her shuttle waited. As she walked through the corridors of the orbital station, she passed other military personnel who were all preparing for what was coming. Some looked nervous, but most seemed determined. They all understood what was at stake. Back in the communication center, the remaining staff monitored the approaching alien fleet. The Catherians had begun to spread out into attack formation, and their ships were powering up weapon systems. Energy readings showed massive power buildups across the entire fleet. They were preparing for a bombardment that would eliminate all human resistance within hours. Hyunwoo sat down at the command console and opened a secure channel to Earth Command. General Park Min-ho appeared on the screen from his bunker deep beneath the Korean peninsula. Status report, Commander, the general said. The final warning has been delivered and rejected as expected. The alien fleet will be in optimal position within 45 minutes. All preparations are complete on this end. Understood. You and your staff have done excellent work. History will remember this day. The transmission ended, and Hyunwoo looked around at his team. Dr. Yunji had returned to her console and was monitoring alien communications. The other officers were tracking fleet movements and preparing final reports. They all knew that very soon everything would change. Through the viewing screen, the alien fleet continued its approach toward Earth. The massive ships moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything that could threaten them. Soon they would discover that their assumptions about human capabilities were completely wrong, but for now they remained certain of their coming victory. The countdown continued toward the moment when Earth would reveal what humanity had really been preparing for all these months. Deep beneath the Gobi Desert, in a facility that did not appear on any official maps, engineer Taemin Cho made final adjustments to systems that had been under construction for 30 years. The underground complex stretched for kilometers in every direction and contained technology that no government had ever publicly acknowledged. Hundreds of technicians worked at control stations, monitoring power levels and system diagnostics, while Taemin moved between the various sections checking everything one final time. The main chamber housed equipment that looked nothing like conventional human technology. Massive crystalline structures grew from the floor and ceiling, connected by cables that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. Computer displays showed readouts in languages that most humans could not read, and energy patterns that defied normal physics. This was Project Silence, and it represented humanity's greatest secret. Power levels are stable across all primary nodes, reported Dr. Hai-Jin Park as she reviewed data from her monitoring station. She had been working on the project since its beginning and understood the systems better than anyone except Taemin himself. Good, he replied as he checked another set of readings. What about the orbital array? All satellites are in position and responding normally. The aliens still think they are looking at old mining equipment and defunct communication relays. Taemin nodded with satisfaction. The deception had been perfect. For decades, Earth had been launching what appeared to be standard industrial satellites and space platforms. The Catherians had detected them during their initial survey of the solar system, but dismissed them as typical primitive technology. They had no idea that each satellite contained components of the most advanced defensive system ever created. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Admiral Jinho Nam stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Incheon and reviewed deployment orders for the Earth Defense Fleet. His ships were moving into standard defensive positions around the planet exactly as military doctrine suggested they should. Every movement was textbook procedure and completely predictable. The aliens would see exactly what they expected to see. "Sir, the Catherians are maintaining their approach vector," reported Commander Lee Dong-hyuk from the tactical station. "They show no signs of concern about our fleet movements." "Why would they?" Admiral Jin Ho replied. "As far as they know, we are just 200 obsolete warships trying to protect a helpless planet. Let them keep thinking that." The Earth Defense Fleet consisted of ships that were deliberately outdated by at least 20 years. Their weapons were standard fusion missiles and particle beam arrays that any advanced civilization would consider primitive. Their armor was conventional titanium steel composites that could be penetrated by Catherian weapons without much difficulty. Everything about the fleet was designed to reinforce alien assumptions about human military capabilities. But Admiral Jin Ho and his crew knew something the aliens did not. The real defense of Earth had nothing to do with the ships they could see. On Luna City, Lieutenant Ye Jin Han coordinated the evacuation of the civilian population from the moon's main settlement. Transport ships arrived every few minutes to take groups of colonists back to Earth or to the outer system colonies. The evacuation looked like standard military procedure for protecting civilians during wartime, but it was actually something much more sophisticated. "Sector 7 is clear," reported Sergeant Kim Jae-ho as his team finished loading the last transport from the industrial district. "All essential personnel have been relocated to the designated areas." Yejin checked her tablet and confirmed that the evacuation was proceeding exactly on schedule. What the aliens did not know was that many of the people being evacuated were not actually civilians. They were technicians and engineers who had been maintaining hidden equipment scattered across the lunar surface. Now that their work was complete, they were being moved to safe positions for what was about to happen. "How long until the Catherians reach bombardment range?" she asked her communications officer. 32 minutes, Lieutenant." "Good. We should have the last transports away with 5 minutes to spare." The Catherian fleet continued its approach with the slow confidence of predators who knew their prey could not escape. Admiral Vex Thule studied tactical displays showing the positions of human ships and found them exactly where his battle computers had predicted they would be. The humans were following standard defensive doctrine, which made them predictable and easy to destroy. "Begin preliminary target acquisition," he ordered his weapons officers. "I want firing solutions for every human vessel and all major planetary installations." The massive alien warships began powering up their main weapon systems. Energy readings spiked across the fleet as thousands of particle cannons and antimatter torpedoes prepared for the coming bombardment. Each Catherian ship carried enough firepower to devastate an entire continent, and together they could reduce Earth to a lifeless rock within hours. But hidden in the deep underground facility beneath the Gobi Desert, Dr. Mi Young Song monitored quantum field fluctuations that told a very different story. The alien fleet was moving into position exactly as planned, and every ship was following the predicted approach routes. Years of computer modeling and careful preparation were about to pay off. "All quantum resonance chambers are synchronized," she reported to Taemin over the internal communication system. "Field generators are operating at optimal efficiency." "Excellent," came his reply. "Begin final activation sequence. We will be ready when the order comes." Dr. Mi Young had spent most of her career studying theoretical physics that most scientists considered impossible. Quantum field manipulation, dimensional folding, and space-time distortion had been subjects of academic curiosity until the day Earth received its first warning about the Catherian expansion. Then theoretical physics had suddenly become the most important field of study in human civilization. Back on Seoul Orbital Station, Commander Hyunwoo Park received status reports from facilities across the solar system. Every hidden installation was ready, every concealed weapons platform was online, and every piece of equipment was functioning perfectly. The deception that had taken decades to construct was about to be tested. "Sir, we are receiving communication," Requests from several planetary governments, reported his communication officer. They want to know if there is any hope of survival. Hyun-woo considered the question carefully. The truth was that there was more than hope, but he could not tell anyone that. The success of Project Silence depended on absolute secrecy until the very last moment. Tell them that Earth Defense Command will do everything possible to protect civilian populations, he replied. That is all we can say for now. Dr. Yoon-ji Kim continued monitoring Catherian communications and translating the messages between alien ships. The enemy commanders were discussing their attack plans in detail, and their confidence was complete. They had divided Earth's defense fleet into target groups and assigned specific ships to destroy each human vessel. They expected the battle to last less than 30 minutes. They are planning to demand surrender one more time before they begin firing, she reported to Hyun-woo. Admiral Vex Thule wants to give us a chance to see the hopelessness of our situation. How generous of him, Hyun-woo replied with dry humor. Captain So-young Lee had returned to her battlecruiser and was now in position with the main defense fleet. Her ship, the Busan, was 40 years old and carried weapons that were outdated even when they were new. But she and her crew knew their real job was not to fight the aliens with conventional weapons. Their job was to look helpless, while something far more dangerous prepared to strike. Captain, all stations report ready for action, her executive, Officer Commander Park Jun-ho, informed her. Very good. Maintain standard defensive posture and wait for orders from Fleet Command. Through the bridge window, she could see other Earth Defense Fleet ships taking their assigned positions. The formation looked exactly like something from a military textbook, and the aliens would have no trouble predicting how the battle would unfold. That predictability was precisely what made the plan so effective. The Catherian fleet was now less than 20 minutes away from optimal firing position. Their ships had spread out across a massive area of space, and their weapons were charging to full power. Admiral Vex Thule was already composing the victory message he would send back to the Catherian homeworld after Earth's destruction was complete. But in hidden facilities across the solar system, human technicians made final preparations for something the aliens could never have imagined. Project Silence was ready and waiting for the command to activate. The real defense of Earth was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The countdown continued toward the moment when the Catherians would discover that their assumptions about human capabilities were completely wrong. Admiral Vex Thule stood on the command deck of his flagship and watched the final approach to Earth with satisfaction. The human planet grew larger on his viewing screens as the Catherian fleet moved into attack formation. 10,000 warships spread across space in perfect geometric patterns that had been used to conquer dozens of worlds. The formation was beautiful in its deadly precision and completely overwhelming to any primitive species. All vessels report ready for bombardment, his tactical officer announced. Target acquisition is complete for all human ships and planetary installations. Excellent, Vex Thule replied. Open a channel to the human command center. I will give them one final opportunity to witness the power of the Catherian Empire before we destroy them. The communication was sent to Seoul Orbital Station, where Commander Hyun-woo Park received the incoming transmission. Dr. Yoon-ji Kim translated the alien words as they appeared on the screen. Admiral Vex Thule's image was imposing with gray skin and large black eyes that showed no emotion. Human creatures, you are about to witness the fate that awaits all species who resist Catherian rule. Your defensive fleet will be eliminated first, followed by your orbital installations, and finally your planet itself. This is the price of defiance. Sucker. Transmission ended, and the alien fleet began its final weapon charging sequence. Energy readings spiked across thousands of ships as particle cannons reached maximum power, and antimatter torpedoes armed themselves for launch. The display was meant to terrify human observers and demonstrate the hopelessness of resistance. But Commander Hyun-woo Park showed no fear as he activated his command console and sent a coded message to every hidden facility in the solar system. The message contained only 2 words, but they represented 30 years of preparation and the culmination of humanity's greatest scientific achievement. Silent protocol, he transmitted. Deep beneath the Gobi Desert, engineer Taimin Cho received the activation order and turned to his control team. The main chamber hummed with energy as quantum field generators reached full power and dimensional, folding equipment prepared to reshape space itself. All systems are green, reported Dr. Hai-Jin Park. Quantum resonance chambers are synchronized across all nodes. Activate silent protocol, Taemin ordered. Similar commands went out simultaneously to hidden installations across the solar system. On asteroids that appeared to be mining stations, concealed equipment powered up and began generating fields that had never been detected by alien sensors. Satellites that looked like communication relays revealed their true purpose as components of the most advanced weapons system ever created. Dr. Mi-Young Song monitored quantum field readings as the system came online. Reality itself began to bend around the Catherian fleet as dimensional space folded, according to carefully calculated parameters. The aliens had no sensors that could detect what was happening because the technology operated outside conventional physics. Field distortion is within acceptable parameters, she reported. Beginning selective targeting sequence. The first Catherian ships to vanish were scouts on the outer edge of the formation. One moment they were transmitting normal status reports, and the next moment they simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, no energy signature. They were there, and then they were not. Admiral Vex Thule noticed the disappearance of his forward scouts and demanded an explanation from his sensor officers. What happened to Squadron 7? Unknown, sir, came the confused reply. They are no longer on our sensors, but we detected no weapons fire or system failures. Before Vex Thule could respond, another group of ships vanished from the fleet's left flank. Then more ships disappeared from the right side. The pattern made no sense because there were no human weapons anywhere near those positions. All ships report status immediately, he ordered, but already dozens more vessels had blinked out of existence. Captain So-Young Lee watched from the bridge of her battlecruiser as sections of the alien fleet began disappearing without any apparent cause. Her crew stared at their sensors in amazement as massive Catherian warships simply stopped existing. The visible Earth defense fleet maintained their defensive positions and showed no sign of being involved in whatever was happening to the aliens. Captain, what are we seeing? Asked her executive officer, Commander Park Jun-ho. Justice, she replied, simply. The disappearances accelerated as more hidden installations came online and began targeting alien vessels. The Catherians tried to withdraw, but found that ships attempting to retreat vanished even faster than those maintaining attack positions. They were trapped within a carefully constructed dimensional field that had been building around them for the past hour. Dr. Yoonji Kim monitored alien communications as panic spread through their fleet. The disciplined military chatter of confident conquerors gave way to confused shouts and desperate calls for help. They are trying to contact their homeworld, she reported to Commander Hyunwoo Park. But their long-range communication arrays are being affected by whatever is causing the disappearances. Good, he replied. They need to understand that they are completely alone. Engineer Tae-Min Cho coordinated the targeting sequence from his underground facility. Each alien ship was being carefully evaluated and processed according to predetermined criteria. The most aggressive vessels and those with the heaviest weapons were eliminated first, while command ships were saved for last so that their crews could witness the destruction of their fleet. We are maintaining selective targeting, he reported to his team. Each ship is being displaced into secure dimensional pockets where they cannot harm anyone or escape. The technology was not destruction in the conventional sense. The alien ships were being moved into isolated dimensional spaces where they continued to exist, but were completely cut off from normal reality. Their crews remained alive but trapped in a void where they could neither fight nor flee. Admiral Vex Thule watched in horror as his mighty fleet dissolved around him. Thousands of ships that had conquered nearly 50 worlds were disappearing, without any visible cause. His sensors showed no human weapons firing and no energy signatures that could explain what was happening. All remaining vessels formed defensive clusters, he ordered desperately. Maximum shields and prepare for unknown attack. But the defensive formations made no difference. Ships continued to vanish regardless of their shields or weapons status. The invisible force that was consuming his fleet operated according to principles that Catherian science could not understand or counter. Lieutenant Yejin Han monitored the battle from her position on Luna City and watched alien formations collapse as their numbers dropped below critical thresholds. What had started as the largest invasion fleet in Catherian history was rapidly becoming a scattered collection of terrified survivors. "Sir, the alien fleet strength has dropped below 4,000 ships," she reported to Earth Command. "Disappearance rate is accelerating." Dr. Myung-song made fine adjustments to the quantum field generators as the system processed larger numbers of alien vessels. The dimensional folding effect was working exactly as theoretical models had predicted, and the targeting computers were able to handle multiple simultaneous displacements without any system strain. "Field stability remains optimal," she announced. "We can continue operations indefinitely." The few remaining Catherian ships tried every desperate measure they could think of. Some attempted to ram Earth vessels hoping that proximity to human ships would provide protection. Others powered down all systems thinking that reduced energy signatures might make them invisible to whatever was hunting them. Nothing worked. Commander, Hyunwoo Park opened a communication channel to the surviving alien vessels. Dr. Yoonji Kim translated his words into the Catherian language as he spoke. "Catherian Fleet, this is Earth Defense Command. Your situation is now clear to you. We offered peaceful withdrawal and you chose war. You dismissed our defensive capabilities and now you see the consequences. We are not the primitive species you believed us to be." Admiral Vexthul received the transmission aboard his flagship, which was now one of fewer than 500 ships remaining from his original fleet of 10,000. The human's words were spoken calmly without anger or hatred, but they carried the weight of absolute power. "What are you?" he transmitted back to Earth. "What kind of weapons are these?" "Not weapons," came the reply. "Tools." Humanity learned long ago that the universe contains possibilities beyond conventional understanding. We have spent decades preparing for this moment. As if to emphasize the point, another wave of ships vanished from the alien formation. The remaining vessels huddled, together in tight groups, but their proximity provided no protection. The force that was eliminating them operated on principles that made traditional military tactics useless. The great Catherian fleet that had approached Earth with such confidence was now reduced to scattered survivors floating in space around a planet they could no longer threaten. Their weapons were useless, their shields were ineffective, and their enemies remained completely invisible. The tide of battle had turned in a way that no alien commander had ever experienced before. Admiral Vexthul stared at his tactical display in disbelief as the numbers continued to drop. His fleet of 10,000 warships had been reduced to fewer than 300 vessels in less than 2 hours. The remaining ships clustered together, in tight formations, but their defensive postures provided no protection against the invisible force that continued to eliminate them one by one. "Sir, we have lost contact with the entire 3rd Battle Group," reported his communication officer with barely controlled panic in her voice. "They were there 30 seconds ago and now there is nothing." Vexthul had commanded Catherian forces for over 40 years and conquered more worlds than any other admiral in their history. He had seen every type of weapon technology and faced every known form of resistance. But nothing had prepared him for warfare that operated outside the fundamental laws of physics as his people understood them. "Scan for any type of energy signature," he ordered his sensor teams. "There must be some trace of whatever technology is doing this." But the sensor readings remained frustratingly empty. No energy weapons, no exotic particles, no gravitational distortions. Ships simply ceased to exist without leaving any evidence of how or why. It was as if reality itself was selectively editing his fleet out of existence. Dr. Yoonji Kim intercepted and translated the increasingly desperate communications between alien vessels. The disciplined military language of the Catherian Empire was breaking down as commanders struggled to understand what was happening to them. "They are requesting permission to surrender," she reported to Commander Hyunwoo Park. "Admiral Vexthul wants to open direct communication with our leadership." "Let him wait," Hyunwoo replied. "They need to understand the complete hopelessness of their situation before we are willing to talk." On the bridge of her battlecruiser, Captain So-Young Lee watched the alien formations collapse as ship after ship disappeared from her sensors. The Earth Defense Fleet maintained their positions and continued following standard defensive protocols, even though the real battle was being fought by systems they could not see. "Captain, the aliens are trying to retreat toward the outer system," reported her tactical officer. "But the ships attempting to flee are disappearing faster than those holding position." "Good," she replied. "They need to learn that there is no escape from the consequences of their choices." Deep beneath the Gobi Desert, engineer Taimin Cho monitored the operation from his control center and made adjustments to ensure maximum psychological impact on the surviving aliens. The targeting sequence was designed not just to eliminate threats but to demonstrate the complete futility of resistance. "We are maintaining optimal displacement rates," reported Dr. Hai-Jin Park. "System efficiency is at 97% and all quantum field generators are stable." "Excellent. Begin the education phase. I want the remaining ships to understand exactly what they are facing." The education phase involved allowing certain alien vessels to detect brief glimpses of the technology being used against them. Carefully, modulated quantum field emissions provided sensor readings that revealed the true scope of humanity's defensive system without compromising its security. Admiral Vex Thule suddenly received sensor data that made his command crew gasp in shock. For just a few seconds, their instruments detected energy patterns that indicated dimensional manipulation on a scale they had never imagined possible. The readings suggested that Earth was surrounded by a network of space-time distortion generators that could reshape reality within the entire solar system. "This is impossible," whispered his chief science officer as she reviewed the data. "No species has ever developed technology capable of controlled dimensional folding. The energy requirements alone would exceed the total output of our homeworld." But even as she spoke, another group of ships vanished from their formation, proving that the impossible technology was very real and completely functional. Lieutenant Ye-Jin Han coordinated intelligence gathering operations from her position on Luna City and compiled detailed records of alien reactions for later analysis. Her teams had been monitoring Catherian communications and behavior patterns since the beginning of the engagement. "Sir, the aliens are beginning to understand that this is not conventional warfare," she reported to Earth Command. "Their psychological profiles indicate extreme stress and complete tactical confusion." That was exactly what human planners had hoped for. The goal was not simply to defeat the Catherian fleet, but to fundamentally alter their understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. Fear and respect were more effective than destruction for ensuring long-term security. Dr. Mi-Young Song fine-tuned the quantum field parameters to maintain perfect stability while processing larger numbers of alien vessels. The theoretical physics behind the system were based on discoveries that had been kept secret from the rest of human civilization for over 30 years. "Field resonance patterns are optimal," she announced. "We can continue operations at current displacement rates for several more hours if necessary." But continued operations would not be necessary. The psychological impact on the surviving aliens was already complete. Admiral Vex Thule transmitted a desperate message to Earth requesting immediate communication with human leadership. Dr. Yoonji Kim translated his words as they came through the speakers. "Earth Command, this is Admiral Vex Thule of the Catherian Empire. I request immediate cessation of hostilities and direct negotiation with your commanders. We acknowledge that our assumptions about your capabilities were incorrect." Commander Hyun-Woo Park allowed several minutes to pass before responding to emphasize that humans were now in complete control of the situation. When he finally answered, his voice was calm and professional. "Admiral Vex Thule, this is Earth Defense Command. We are prepared to discuss terms, but first you must understand what has happened here. Your fleet entered our system believing that humanity was primitive and defenseless. You were wrong." "What kind of technology is this?" Vex Thule asked. "How are you eliminating our ships without weapons or energy signatures?" "We are not eliminating your ships, Admiral. We are relocating them to secure dimensional spaces where they cannot cause harm. Your crews are alive but isolated from normal space-time. They will remain there until we decide what to do with them." The revelation that his missing ships and their crews were still alive but trapped in some kind of dimensional prison was almost worse than if they had been destroyed. Vexthul realized that humanity possessed technology that made conventional warfare completely obsolete. Engineer Tai-Min Cho received authorization to begin the demonstration phase of the operation. Selected alien vessels would be allowed to witness the true scope of Project Silence before being displaced into dimensional storage, along with the rest of their fleet. Begin revealing the orbital network, he ordered his teams. I want them to see exactly how long we have been preparing for this moment. Across the solar system, concealed installations began broadcasting identification signals that revealed their true nature. What the aliens had thought were old mining platforms and communication satellites were actually components of the most sophisticated defensive system ever constructed. Admiral Vexthul watched in growing horror as his sensors detected hundreds of hidden installations throughout the solar system. Every piece of equipment his fleet had dismissed as primitive human technology was actually part of a vast network designed to trap and neutralize invading forces. How long? He transmitted to Earth. How long have you been planning this? We received our first warning about Catherian expansion over 40 years ago, came the reply. We have been preparing for your arrival ever since. Every satellite, every space platform, every mining operation you observed was designed to create the dimensional field network that now surrounds your fleet. The scope of human deception was staggering. For decades, Earth had been creating the appearance of a primitive civilization, while secretly developing technology that operated beyond conventional physics. The Catherians had been completely fooled by a deception that spanned multiple generations. Your species has conquered 47 worlds, the human commander continued. You succeeded because those civilizations tried to fight you with conventional weapons. We chose a different approach. We studied your methods and developed countermeasures that make your military doctrine completely ineffective. Admiral Vexthul looked around his command bridge at officers who had once been confident conquerors, but were now terrified survivors. They had encountered something beyond their understanding and beyond their ability to resist. The great Catherian fleet was trapped helpless and completely at the mercy of a species they had underestimated. The tables had turned in the most devastating way possible. Admiral Jinho Nam stood on the bridge of his flagship and addressed the surviving Catherian vessels through an open communication channel. Only 237 ships remained from the original fleet of 10,000, and those survivors, huddled together in tight formations that provided no real protection, but offered psychological comfort to their terrified crews. Catherian fleet, this is Admiral Jinho Nam of Earth Defense Command. You came here expecting easy conquest, but instead found something you did not anticipate. Now you face a choice that will determine the future of your entire civilization. Doctor, Hyunji Kim translated his words into the alien language while monitoring the reactions from Catherian ships. The fear and confusion in their communications was obvious, even through the mechanical translation devices. Admiral Vexthul responded from his flagship with a voice that carried none of the arrogance he had displayed hours earlier. Admiral Nam, we acknowledge our situation and request terms for the survival of our remaining forces. Your survival is not in question, Jinho replied. Your ships and crews will be returned unharmed, but first you must understand what has really happened here. This was never about destroying your fleet. This was about education. Deep beneath the Gobi Desert, Dr. Mi Young Song began the process of demonstrating Project Silence to the alien survivors. Carefully controlled dimensional fields allowed selected Catherian sensors to observe the technology that had defeated them without compromising its security. Field modulation is stable, she reported to engineer Tai-Min Cho. The aliens are receiving detailed readings on our quantum manipulation systems. Good. They need to understand that this is not some desperate last resort, but a mature technology that we have been developing for decades. The sensor data flowing to Catherian ships revealed the true scope of humanity's preparation. The dimensional field network extended throughout the solar system and was capable of selectively targeting anything within its range. More importantly, the technology was completely scalable and could be expanded to protect human colonies anywhere in the galaxy. Admiral Vexthul studied the readings with growing amazement and fear. This technology could protect entire star systems. How many species have you shared this with? None, came the reply from Earth. Humanity developed this independently after receiving warnings about your expansion from other civilizations. We chose not to flee or submit like the others. We chose to prepare. The revelation that humans had created their defensive system without outside help was particularly disturbing to the Catherian command staff. It suggested that humanity possessed scientific capabilities that exceeded those of much older civilizations. Captain So-Young Lee received orders to escort a small group of Catherian ships on a tour of human defensive installations. The aliens would be allowed to observe the hidden facilities that had defeated their fleet, but would not be permitted to examine the technology closely enough to understand how it worked. Captain, we are ready to begin the demonstration tour, reported her communications officer. The alien vessels are following our escort pattern. Very good. Take them to the asteroid belt installations first. I want them to see how long we have been preparing for this day. The tour revealed the true scope of human deception over the past 40 years. Mining operations that had appeared completely legitimate were actually construction sites for dimensional field generators. Communication satellites were actually targeting computers for the quantum displacement system. Even civilian space stations contained hidden components of the defensive network. Lieutenant Ye-Jin Han coordinated the intelligence briefing that would be provided to selected Catherian officers. They would learn about humanity's place in galactic civilization and the choices that other species had made when faced with Catherian expansion. Sir, we have compiled detailed records of 43 civilizations that encountered Catherian forces, she reported to command. 37 chose immediate surrender. 6 attempted military resistance using conventional weapons and were completely destroyed. None chose the path that humanity selected. The briefing was designed to help the aliens understand that humans were fundamentally different from other species they had encountered. Where others had accepted defeat or fought hopeless battles, humanity had spent decades developing an entirely new approach to interstellar warfare. Engineer Taemin Cho began the final phase of the operation by gradually returning the displaced Catherian ships to normal space. The process was carefully staged to demonstrate human control over the technology, while providing proof that the missing crews were alive and unharmed. Beginning selective restoration sequence, he announced to his team. We will return their ships in small groups so they can verify that their people are safe. The first group of returned vessels appeared suddenly in empty space near the surviving fleet. Their crews were confused, but unharmed after spending hours in dimensional isolation, where they had experienced nothing but emptiness. The psychological impact of the experience would remain with them for the rest of their lives. Dr. Yoonji Kim monitored alien communications as the returned crews reported their experiences to Admiral Vex Thule. The descriptions of existing in a void where time seemed frozen and space had no meaning created additional fear among the survivors. They are beginning to understand that death would have been preferable to permanent imprisonment in dimensional space, she observed. Commander Hyun-Woo Park opened a final communication channel to the Catherian fleet and delivered the terms that would govern their departure from Earth's solar system. Admiral Vex Thule, you and your surviving forces will return to your homeworld as messengers. You will carry word that Earth is under the protection of defensive systems that make conventional military action impossible. Any future Catherian forces that approach human territory will be displaced into permanent dimensional isolation. We understand, Vex Thule replied. But what of our ships and crews that you have already displaced? They will be returned to you gradually over the next several hours. Consider their temporary imprisonment a demonstration of what permanent displacement would involve. We could have kept them forever, but we choose to show mercy. The process of returning displaced ships continued throughout the day as more groups of Catherian vessels materialized in normal space. Each returned crew brought stories of isolation and helplessness that reinforced the message humanity wanted to send. Admiral Jin Ho Nam addressed the fully restored Catherian fleet one final time before their departure. You came here believing that humanity was weak and primitive. You have learned otherwise. Carry this knowledge back to your people and share it with other species who might consider aggression against human worlds. Dr. Mi Young Song prepared a final demonstration of Project Silence that would ensure the aliens never forgot what they had witnessed. A carefully controlled dimensional field encompassed the entire Catherian fleet for exactly 30 seconds before releasing them back to normal space. Field exposure complete, she reported. Every ship in their fleet has now experienced dimensional displacement. They know that we could have kept them permanently if we had chosen to do so. The Catherian fleet began its withdrawal from Earth's solar system with Admiral Vex Thule transmitting a final message of acknowledgement. Earth Defense Command, this is Admiral Vex Thule. We are departing your system and will carry word of human defensive capabilities to our government. This encounter will not be forgotten. Captain So Young Lee escorted the alien fleet to the edge of the solar system where they were released to continue their journey home. The ships that had approached Earth with such confidence now limped away as broken survivors carrying a message that would change galactic civilization. Sir, the last Catherian vessel has crossed the system boundary, she reported to Earth Command. They are no longer our concern. Engineer Tae Min Cho began the process of powering down Project Silence and returning the dimensional field generators to standby mode. The system would remain ready for instant activation, but would no longer actively monitor the space around Earth. All systems returning to normal operational status, he announced. Project Silence has achieved complete success. Months later, Dr. Hyunji Kim monitored galactic communications and reported on the spreading knowledge of humanity's defensive capabilities. The Catherian report had reached dozens of civilizations and was changing the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Sir, we are receiving contact requests from 17 different species, she reported to Commander Hyunwoo Park. They want to establish diplomatic relations with humanity, now that they know we cannot be conquered. The Great Deception was over, and humanity's true place in galactic civilization was finally revealed. Earth would never again be seen as a primitive, world ripe for conquest, but as a power that had proven itself beyond any doubt. The age of human isolation had ended, and the age of human expansion was about to begin.